We are getting both. We have Ritu here. So she was talking about AI just now. And in this session, we are going to have a chat with her about not only AI, but also the publication and the news media that she is currently heading, as well as she co-founded. I see some newcomers coming in the last 5 minutes. I think I'm going to start by doing a short introduction about Ritu again, just so that we know a bit more about her background. So Ritu is actually a familiar name to many of us here. She basically has been doing fact-checking. She has been spearheading a company that do technology solutions for newsroom. She is the co-founder and managing director of Quint Digital Limited, which runs the Quint. It is an independent news site in India. She has strived to provide multiple platforms for free speech, such as the Quint's citizen journalism initiative that's called My Report, and a fact-checking initiative that's called WebCoof. Yes, I pronounced it correctly. And the Quint was awarded the Best News Website award for 2 years by WAN-IFRA. Not only that, she also spent over 2 decades in the broadcast industry, and then she is currently on the advisory boards of Oxford University's Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, the World Editors Forum at WAN-IFRA, and International Fact-Checking Network. So welcome, Ritu. So today, I think other than sharing about your background, we are also going to talk about changing behaviors of users, as well as how we can innovate to catch up with that. Probably we can start by talking about the Quint. Perhaps you want to use just 1 or 2 minutes talking about it. Why the Quint? What prompted you to start it? What sort of problems do you want to solve by having the Quint?
Now, if I speak about why the Quint, it seems like, it would seem really blah, but back in 2014, when, we'd been broadcasters for over 2 decades and only knew broadcasting. So when we decided to move to digital only, there were 2 things that were clear, which is that there is a presumption that younger people are not interested in current affairs and issues, and we felt that that was not the case. It's just that you're generating content in formats and in a vocabulary that's alienating the younger, cooler audiences, that you need to be where the audience is, which is smartphones. So obvious now, not that obvious back then. And the third thing was that you need to make it visual first. That, right. And the fourth thing, of course, is there has to be participative, but because the cell phone is by nature a 2-way device, that you cannot anymore have news which is, the truth keepers are now bringing you information and you just have to passively consume it, that it has to be a 2-way process and you're really a truth seeker along with the audience, which is why, I believe very strongly in citizen journalism, which is that you have to be able to hear from the people on the stories that perhaps are not being reported. And one really important thing, in my 20 years with broadcast, right, it was always SECA male audiences, 40 plus male audiences. Women were being underserved. And we were very clear that gender issues and women's needs are not being addressed by news, which was the other thing that we want to do with the Quint.
Right, so we are hearing a few keywords here. The first, mobile first, which we are talking about 10 years ago or 11 years ago, right? Second is an underserved population, which is the female. The third is about fact-checking, debunking misinformation. So to understand more about the Quint, actually, Ritu had prepared a video. Can we have the video played for the first 3.5 minutes?
इंडिया की पहाड़ी है, इसके पीछे पाकिस्तान
वो तो वहाँ से शेलिंग होती है
वहाँ से शेलिंग होती रही रात को मैं देखता रहा 2 बजे
Almost 19 lakh people have been left out from the final NRC list. These people will eventually go to the foreigners tribunal, and it's expected that lakhs would be declared as foreigners. And after they are declared as foreigners, it is in detention centers like these, which is being constructed in Assam, that they will be housed in.
demolition of innumerable shrines, attacks on masjids and madrasas, economic boycotts of Muslim shopkeepers, as well as the mass exodus of Muslim residents. All of these are systemic efforts at converting and cementing Uttarakhand as India's Devbhumi, an exclusive Hindu-only land.
The recent tragic death of a postgraduate trainee at the Arjekar Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata has cast a harsh spotlight on the systemic failures plaguing our medical institutions.
बहुत सारे कॉलेज हैं शहर में जहां पर 10 से 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 ये तनख्वाह दी जाती है एक सहायक प्राध्यापक को, एक असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर।
There's no such thing as a digital arrest under Indian law. The police, CBI, or whoever, nobody can arrest you over a video call or a phone call.
It is not wrong to sing one's praises during election campaigns. But Arvind Kejriwal claiming that the BJP will shut down Delhi's Mohalla clinics is incorrect. It is fake news.
ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के पहले 8 दिनों में टीम वेबकूफ ने अराउंड 80 से ज्यादा फैक्ट चेक स्टोरीज पब्लिश करे हैं।
Local right-wing groups have stated that they are still active in the movement regarding this issue. Their goal is to free the valley from Muslims. The love jihad case has turned out to be false. The kidnapping case also dismissed by the court.
Right. I think maybe we can just stop there. Now that we have a better understanding about the format, the look and feel of the content. So Ritu, now next, tell us about how your audience respond to content like that. What sort of impact have you seen so far?
I think we've seen a dramatic change over our 10-year journey. When we started out, we were really creating content for millennials to engage with news. Right. And the response was incredible. Very quickly after we were born, we were first born as just a social media page, just as a Facebook page, which was a great learning because we really got a sense of what it is that people were responding to and what was not getting the kind of engagement. The landscape has changed dramatically from that time when there was a lot of engagement on every issue to now where it's a very, very polarized audience.
Correct.
And we're obviously trying to step out and do balanced reporting from the ground, get voices, sort of be the voice of the voiceless and bring these this kind of stories that you just saw clips of. So there is one part of the audience that is hungry for fact-based, truth-based stories, visual stories from the ground. And then there is the other, which is fallen prey, let's say, to the propaganda which comes from a lot of news organizations, which just sort of almost trolls you or attacks you. So it's in the current, for instance, when they say trust surveys, I always ask, whose trust? Because the audience itself is so polarized. So I don't know whether this resonates with other news organizations in other parts of the world, or how as the world is getting more and more polarized, as political propaganda is being used to push that. It's incredible how you're seeing a very different kind of engagement. But what has been a constant right through is the participation of the audience.
Right.
So whether that's in our citizen journalism or whether it is the way they are constantly bombarding us with content that they've come across which they think is suspect and they want us to fact check it. And of course the commenting. Mm-hmm. So the participation has really gone up.
Right. So as someone who is now managing the operations of my newsroom, who is also the person who is, drafting KPIs and managing people's KPI, I can't help every time when I talk to other leaders from other newsrooms, what sort of measures or metrics are you looking at when you decide how you measure your success? What are you looking at, numbers, or are you looking purely qualitatively? Okay, these are the policies that we have changed, these are the discussion that we have triggered, or is it a combination of many things?
I'll be honest, till about 2.5 or 3 years ago, we were chasing page views. We had an SEO team that was generating, away from our journalism, that was just generating content that would get the traffic because that was needed to service the ad sales requirements. We're no longer doing that.
Okay.
We're now really focusing on journalism as a mission in an environment of a lot of disinformation, in an environment where there is very little fact-based reporting happening from the ground. That, you know, a lot of broadcast news, for instance, is just talking heads sort of screaming and shouting in prime time. It's not really news. So we're treating it much more like a mission right now. But what is an important metric for us right now is time spent. We look very closely at ChatGPT on how deep did someone read. We look very carefully at our YouTube metrics on what was the watch time on a video. And we look very carefully at the kind of commenting and the way our journalists are engaging with the comments. I think the way we're looking at success has changed.
Right. So you also mentioned a keyword about how you are positioning, or you are seeing it as a very much mission-based outlet. And for the kind of impacts that you want to create, or the kind of changes that you want to effect, are you already seeing it, or is it still a journey that's ongoing? For instance, we talk about really serving the female audience, which is an underserved population. Can we perhaps have some elaboration from you?
I think the not just women audiences, but
Right.
Gender diverse audience, because we've done so much content and we worked with them on the kind of editorial that we do. Happy to report that we have possibly among the highest women audience percentage, overall percentage in India. So that's one sort of achievement reached. I think on the other hand, we have a membership model. And I think the way people engage with our membership model, because most of our content is not behind a paywall, and yet people come and opt to contribute towards the kind of journalism that we do. And that is a very important sign of success in terms of doing something right, which is making a difference to our audiences.
Talking about subscription, okay, this is very interesting because I look after the subscription business of my outlets. And as a person who look at P&L and financial reports all the time, I can't help but also to ask you this question. When I look at the content that your publication is doing, I can't help but to think, if I were the leader in your newsroom, how can I monetize it? Because I would think that advertisement would probably be a bit difficult. So for you, how does your newsroom monetize? How do you sustain yourself?
Well, we still have an ad-based revenue model, and we have a membership. But I think we're, like you're saying, ad revenue is now becoming a challenge.
Yep,
we
definitely.
are trying to offer a lot of multimedia creative solutions to brands to see if they are open to that. But we find that we're not being able to evangelize the agencies and ad communities because they're still looking at impressions.
Correct, definitely. And it's a
irrespective
very
of how meaningless
it's a
those
very
impressions.
brutal market out there because you have so many newsrooms that is I don't know how many times bigger than you, and then they're competing with their rates. So yeah.
I think our membership, which it's like I'm saying, less than 5% of our content is behind a paywall, but our membership is one source of revenue for us. And I think, so far, now let's see where that goes. We've been third-party fact checkers with Meta.
Right.
That has been able to sustain our large fact-checking team,
Right.
and do a lot of ground reporting on fact-checking as well as against just doing, straight-up fact-checking. Other than that, I think what we're doing really is now, given all the challenges, revenue challenges, is being very, very cost-effective in how we work. I think we made the mistake of having way too large a team when we were born, being too ambitious and too diverse in the kind of content. Now we've focused on the kind of content we think is critical for what's happening in the country right now. And we've one of the few things that we did right when we were born, which is that we trained our journalists to be able to shoot, edit, do graphics, everything on their own. So you don't need separate teams So I think controlling costs is actually the need of the hour, if you ask me.
Understood. I want to very quickly shift our focus over to the changing audience behavior that you are observing. I know in the past few years, we talk about news avoidance, about how people, young or old, even my generation or older generation, are increasingly going to social media directly to keep themselves informed and entertained, and maybe doing many things at once. And the traffic, direct traffic going to news site has basically steadily decreasing. Is that something that you observe on your end, and what else have you observed other than this?
One of the issues, of course, is trust. I think audiences are not trusting news content because it comes mixed with so much misinformation. And I think that's one of the things that we focused on transparency, on how we're funded, who we are, how our journalism is done. We do a lot of behind the scenes content. We let the audience know why we did a story, how we did it. So I think that is important. I spent some time in the earlier session talking about how to get audiences to sort of slightly mimic either AI or social media kind of an experience in terms of formats that you can opt in for to get audiences, so audience spending lesser time. It's called an attention economy for a reason. So to be able to offer quality content, but at a glance with much less time investment, but at the same time try and engage them to actually consume more. I think so. The other thing that I must confess I'm only partially successful at is, given that audiences are now conflating between influencers and journalists. I don't think, because there's so many influencers who are behaving or putting out journalistic content, is to constantly have a conversation with the editorial team saying that we have to take a leaf out of some of the tips and tricks without diluting your journalism or the ethics of your journalism, is to be able to, because for the influencer, her or his sustenance depends on being able to engage the audience.
Right.
Sometimes we just put out content and we say, now it's, for the audience is a fool if it's not engaging with it. I think to understand that, and of course to be as visual as possible.
Right.
The text, as there's enough data, enough surveys to show that people are reading very little.
Right. So are there some strategies that you would like to share with us in terms of how the Quint is responding to that? Do you have, for instance, personality first content, with a journalist's face always attached to a genre or a format of video, or is it are you building direct communication or distribution channels with your audience, or maybe some events, or maybe more SOCMAC visual content that your audience can feel more related to your brand? So some strategies.
So visual content for sure. Almost every piece of content that we do, we try and have a visual version of it. A lot of it is visual first. It is being done for video, or it has been done for an interactive. We use this tool called Shorthand to convert a lot of our stories into visual interactive. I think interactivity is one of the things that we find has really worked for us, because it just gets people to engage that much more. We're definitely pushing individual journalists and their voice and what they stand for much more. And I think one of the things that we're very careful about is being conscious of our bias.
Right.
Because I think that's one of the things that bothers audiences a lot, that, they're always, and they sort of seem to club you as, they are left or they're right. I think the fact that we're constantly giving you view and counter view of everything that we do, not everything, but a lot of the contentious or difficult to grasp issues, we get a voice on one side and the other side. The other thing that we're doing is now we're working much more with domain experts and authoritative voices to write for us.
Okay.
And we do a lot of explainers.
Right. We still have another 9 minutes to go. I want to save the last few minutes for questions from the floor. But before we go there, I just want to ask one last question. I was listening to your last session about AI, how it is changing and how it is enhancing newsroom productivity. So for you, who is also managing a tech company with AI solutions for newsroom, right? What sort of advice or suggestions would you give to newsroom leaders these days if they are thinking about upskilling their people, or even maybe restructuring or future-proofing their companies? Like, okay, am I going to say allocate 20% or 30% more of my resources in hiring someone that's related to tech or AI, and then maybe downsizing my editorial because those are the work that I already foresee can be replaced by AI? What sort of general, big picture do you have for, decision makers in newsroom?
I don't believe that AI can replace journalism. So I don't think that we would choose between tech and AI as far as the newsroom is concerned. Then there is the pure tech companies, which is a completely different ball game altogether. But I think what is really important to future-proof is that break all silos in the newsroom. All journalists should be able to understand tech, should be able to be very familiar and skilled with AI, to do workshops, and to be very careful about not reaching out for every new shiny AI toy that comes in. I think to be able to have a team that is filtering through and saying, look, this tool, why don't you experiment with this, rather than everybody try and do everything, and then obviously then sure. that's a mess. And I think on the tech side, my interaction with the Quintype team, which is when the Quintype was born, which is a Bangalore-based, which is the south of India, the company that's created our CMS, which worked very closely with our editorial team to understand what an editorial need is to create Quintype, and now is of course integrating a lot of AI features into it, is to work equally with the other way around, which is that the tech minds need to understand editorial needs.
Totally.
So I think this is really important, is to now not have silos. And I would also say that given the revenue challenges, I think it's really important for everybody in the newsroom to know where your revenue is coming from.
Right. So do we have any questions from the floor? We have 6 minutes, so perhaps we can take 3. Is there any? Is there? All right.
Hello, hi, thank you for your talk. I'm Mayuko from the AP. One question that you mentioned just recently, please, Ritu. It's about the interactivity with the viewers, readers. Could you share some examples of how you provide that platform, please?
Sure. I sort of showed in some of my slides in the earlier session on how we now on the Quint have an opt-in for, I don't want to read the whole story, I only want to listen to the story, I only want to be able to read a summary and move on, or no, just give it to me in bullet points, or no, can I just get a question answer format because my brain processes that easily, or look, I'll just do a multiple choice question. So we have that, so it's not just a passive reading, it's an engagement. In another way, on our fact checking, we have a WhatsApp tip line where anyone can send us any content that they find is suspect, and our team will fact check it, get back to them, and we also publish that fact check content on the site saying who flagged it to us if that person is okay with their name being mentioned. And then we have a citizen journalism vertical within the Quint. It's called My Report, where any citizen can come forth, and we have a team that works with that citizen to whatever story it is, that whatever issue that it is that they want to be able to raise. It could be something as small as potholes in their city to a real estate problem where my apartment has been taken over, or an environmental disaster, the water body in my area has got toxic affluents in it. We work with them to be able to tell their stories in a video format. And these are just some of the examples of how we're interactive.
Right. Thank you. Fantastic. Any more questions? Yes.
Yeah. Hi,
over there.
I'm Anupama. I'm an audio journalist based in Chennai, South India. I was curious to know, I do a lot of hyperlocal stories, and I was curious to know, what does Quint see you spoke about a lot about the video movement, video, focus and video being first, visual being first. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of the audio space, just in terms of your metrics, in terms of your focus, because it's obviously quite different in the Western markets. I was just curious to know what you are seeing on the ground, in the Indian space.
Hyperlocal content.
And audio.
Audio. We don't do too much hyperlocal content. We have journalists and stringers we work with across, depending on, when they send us a story, especially when it's our focus on climate change, we do a lot of hyperlocal content. Otherwise, it's largely a national level offering. Audio, we have podcasts, but I will confess that we haven't. The podcast, for instance, we have a podcast called Urdu Nama, where the podcaster picks up one Urdu term and then spends a lot of time talking about what that word means and, tells stories around it, etc. A podcast like that, which is very niche, does very well. But whenever we've had, a podcast which is today's news in a podcast format with specialists talking about the big news, we used to have a podcast called The Big Story. We discontinued it because for the amount of effort that would go into doing a daily podcast versus the kind of listenership that would have, that was wasn't resource effective at all. We haven't put it out yet, but we're now going to experiment with true crime, but from a slightly newsroom perspective of true crime. And let's see what kind of engagement that gets.
Right. We actually only have 1 more minute, so I really want to squeeze here. Do we have any question? If not, I'm going to ask the last question. No? Okay, I'm going to ask the last question. People always like to ask about the successes, but for me, there's always this survivorship bias. So I'm going to ask you about maybe just one failure that you can share, but it gives you a very important lesson that we all can collectively learn from.
Undoubtedly, the fact that we tried to be too ambitious. I think increasingly the digital landscape is for niche content and not for everything for everybody is not digital.
Right.
I think having too large a team, trying to do too many things, trying to be everything news for everyone, I think all of that is now dead. And I think that's one mistake that we learned from.
Right.
You need to be able to offer something that nobody else has on offer. Because if you're going to offer versions of what everyone else has, there's no way that you're going to build audiences and sustain yourself.
Pick your better. So there you have it from Ritu. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone.